It's a pleasure to be with everyone here today. Today, I want to talk with you about a subject that I think is near and dear to everyone's heart because it really gets to the core of diversity. And this is all about cognitive diversity. So, what I'd like to do is just spend a few minutes to be able to share with you some thoughts, some areas of opportunity that I believe really face all of us, and the ability to be able to communicate on a different level and to be able to connect. I'm going to share my screen here, and I appreciate you bearing with me as I get this started. Thank you very much. Okay, so cognitive diversity, the fuel of global progress. In Armonk, New York, IBM has a team of developers that all share one trait in common. Out of 50% of these hires, they all play jazz. And why is that important? It's important because in order to play jazz, you have leaders, you have followers, you have ebb, you have flow, you have the blending and the ability to create harmony, to feel a rhythm, to be able to adapt, to be able to improvise. It's not just about being the one who's in the spotlight. It's about a flow. It's about an opportunity to be able to connect, to be able to create something, to be able to work within a system, but then also to push things beyond, to take a look at where there are possibilities to be able to explore. And ideas build civilization. So a lot of times we think and we look at brick and mortar, we take a look at the buildings, we take a look at the IP, we take a look at the technology. A lot of the speakers today have spoken about the need for entrepreneurship, the need for technology as an asset, as an accelerator to be able to move forward. But the amazing thing is that when it all comes down to it, it's people that build these companies, people that come up with these technologies, people that build the value and the underpinnings that actually form civilizations. And where do these come from? Where do people get these inspirations? What is it that happens? The power of an idea is something that cannot be underestimated because ideas have built civilizations, and that spark shared between a community that then unites toward a common purpose and is able to move forward. Therefore, today, in terms of talking about cognitive diversity, there are several different components I want to talk about that go further than the demographic diversity. Because at the core, we're really taking a look at why is it that we want different people to participate at the table? Their experience, their thoughts, their perspective, and most of all, it's about their essence. It's not just about their gifts, their talents, and what they can contribute, but it's about who they actually are. And if we were to take the model and be able to break down the silos, as we like to put things into different categories and buckets and tables, but if we were to actually take a look at things in more of a three-dimensional perspective, we would see that a person's essence, experience, and perspective help to anchor and help to create a different type of opportunity from which to share, from which to receive. And the thoughts are actually the result of different types of inputs as opposed to just different internal ideas. So the paradox that we have to embrace here is that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Now, I've heard this quote, and I'm sure you've heard this quote before, but what really struck me was the use of the word we when Albert Einstein said this. Einstein, in coming up with the theory of relativity and the E equals mc squared, what's amazing is that Einstein took us to a certain point, but there's a realization that what worked at a certain point in time is not necessarily going to hold true into the future. It's not going to stay the same. So on the one hand, you have fundamentals and principles that can endure. On the other hand, you have the opportunity for others to come in, to iterate, to be able to build on top. And what we're doing with the Trillions team right now, we're working in a lot of these different areas, from taking a look at how can we take in-ground assets and be able to preserve their future potential in the way in which they could be utilized and not just disappearing into a market or an exchange, or being able to take a look at the way the future of income is being affected, and how are people able to take their ideas, their talents, their capabilities, and be able to share them in a way where they're able to create benefit on an exponential level. So in order to be able to understand what could be possible, we need to have a glimpse of what we call the undiscovered country, which is really the future. And the future acts as a force that can pull us forward, that can change the status quo, but it requires vision to be able to get there. And it requires the inspiration and not just the perspective of one, but the perspective of multiple people to be able to see beyond what is being presented today, the almost certain probable future, and to be able to see the future of possibility, this undiscovered country, which can unite and bring us forward. But because thoughts are so powerful and the inputs that we're receiving from social media and other types of things, we have to guard our thoughts because our thoughts do influence the way in which we take action. And as we know, that there's a lot of focus on the diversity side in terms of contribution, but there's also a lot of conversation about bias. And we start moving into those areas that actually define us in terms of how we're different, but we get locked in that definition of difference instead of seeing the compatibility and the way that we can unite and being able to drive forward. So it's almost as though we need a psychological herd immunity to be able to keep us on a track that allows us to be able to transcend the status quo. And how are we going to be able to do that? By being able to run our individual races, by being able to bring everything that we are in terms of our essence, and through a shared commitment. Because a shared commitment shifts the entire landscape and allows us to be able to access something different, something that goes beyond what's here today, something that goes beyond even what could be in our almost certain future. And we need to remember to look up. And what do I mean by look up? If we look up at the stars, up in the heavens, and we're actually able to see the multitude, we have to remember and understand and appreciate how humility can be an asset. Humility keeps us able to see things that we might not be privy to, or to be able to recognize how others can expose us to our own blind spots, and to realize that we each have different pieces of the puzzle, and that it's not about one individual being able to succeed, but that we succeed at the level of community. Which brings me to co-creation, which is the possibility-driven equation. And just like that paradox, it's an each to each and it's a many to many. It's an individual interaction, exchange, bringing of one's essence, and then it's the opportunity to be able to inspire, unite, and bring together many to be able to connect with others on that level at the same time, which brings us to an interesting other component of that paradox. From Think and Grow Rich, Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning, adapted the following: I fully recognize that I can sustain no success unless it is founded in truth and integrity. Therefore, I will always keep the well-being of others in mind and engage in no activity that is selfish or that does not benefit all whom it affects. And he goes on to say that by developing love for humanity, he's going to be able to overcome hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism, realizing that negative attitudes toward others cannot bring success. But the other piece of this that's very important here is that I will cause others to believe in me because I will believe in them and in myself. We also have to believe in ourselves. When we're bringing our essence to the table, we need to be able to bring all that we have. We need to be able to speak up for ourselves. We need to be empowered. We need to take advantage of opportunities like technology that can enable the sharing of ideas. Or in certain areas, we're working with artificial intelligence that can virtualize human experience, human expertise, not to be able to replace the human being, but to make sure that that human being is counted in the equation when certain decisions are being considered and being made. And that opportunity then to allow others to step into one's other shoes, one's other thinking, one's other perspective, to be able to better understand their relationship together. For me, I have found great opportunity to experience freedom in collective improvisation by being a classically trained violinist in a hip hop reggae band. There hadn't really been a lot of violin in hip hop reggae. It was an opportunity to be able to push that boundary. But just like the jazz musicians, I can appreciate how that ebb and flow, that energy that takes place, the leading, the following, being able to express oneself and also be part of a collective at the same time. And so, what I want to leave all of you is that we can. Going back to Einstein's quote, we together, through the power of co creation, can. And I am honored to work with a lot of people that have stepped up during COVID and said, you know what, the status quo is out the window. We need to be able to think beyond. We need to innovate beyond. We need to get further than masks. We need to get further than coronavirus. We have to be thinking about the things that we're not already thinking about and include others in that. How can we do that? It's happening in the film industry. It's happening in the music industry. It's happening where industries are being disrupted right now, but there's also tremendous opportunity because it's created the ability to also look in and take some time to pause, understand what truly matters, understand how we rely on each other, and that it's not an exchange where it's a give and a take in a calculus of who wins and who loses. It is truly about win-win when we see that each of us has a piece of the puzzle, a piece of the equation, and that contributing, we put together an amazing labyrinth and opportunity. And just like that piece of light or that thought that impacts an already connected civilization, we have the ability to be able to impact the world and to be able to create a bright future. And just as we had been talking about humility, it's important that we remember that we need to look to others to be able to have the answers. Africa has been leading in so many different areas. When I was in venture capital, it was the subject of being able to speed up clinical development worldwide. A lot of people take a look at the equation from a utility standpoint. What are you contributing? What is the output? We need to shift that, and we need to be able to understand how those who are really close and understanding the different values can be able to expose us to the blind spots and to the pride and the hubris that we have. And by being humble together, we can be able to create a very bright future. Thank you very much.